Hey everyone, it's Kerri-Ann and I'm back with another video. So for this video I wanted to do a very basic introduction to using stencils. If you know of my brand Imagine Design Create, then you'll know that we've been going now for quite a few years, and 3 or 4 years ago we brought out our own brand range of stamps and stencils and papers and things like that. So I thought I would use those to showcase how you can use stencils. Now, there are hundreds of ways you can use stencils. This is just a few of the very basic ways to give you a bit of an introduction to stenciling and bringing stenciling into your card making and crafting. So some of the stencil designs that I brought out, I think it must be four, maybe 5 years ago now, are the masks and stencils range. Now I brought these out because I wanted to be able to have stencils that would be useful in all sorts of crafting, scrapbooking, card making, just all sorts of things, bullet journaling, everything. So these are really handy for lots of different tips and techniques. So I did circles and I did windows with shapes and stars, then the rounded squares, and I did squares and all sorts of different ones. And then I did hexagons and everything. And this is one of the hexagon ones, and what they were is that they sort of go in so you can change the thickness of the mask and things like that. So I did lots of different stencils, and then this was one of the more intricate ones that I did. Oh, you can't really see it that way, can you? Let's leave it like that. Put it on the black there. So this one was one of the designs I did, again, must be 3 or 4 years ago now, but it was so that you can start using a focal point and then adding these additionals on. So when you look at a stencil, just remember that the way you see the stencil there doesn't need to be how you use it. So I know a lot of people who are just starting out often look at a stencil and think, oh, well, I'm not going to use it exactly like that. But you've got to have a look at it and think, well, actually, I could use these parts for a border, or that would be really good to use as a line, or I might only want to use this part. I might not want to use this part in that card. I might only want to use that, and I might want to use it as a border going all the way round. So there's lots of different ways you can manoeuvre the stencil or the piece of surface you're working on, whether it be card or paper or cardboard, mountboard, grey board, even walls. Lots of people have been using these stencils for walls. And don't forget, you can use these with fabric paint as well. So if you're thinking of making t-shirts and things, then these are fantastic. I've actually got some clothing made by one of the design team who used our stencils on children's clothing and made a beautiful range of children's clothing. So there's lots of ways that you can use stencils, so don't be afraid of them. So let's look at some of the really basic ways you can use stencils in your crafting. I'm going to move the camera again, so let's move you down a bit. Okay, so if we move these out of the way, that's from my last stamping video, so we'll put that over there. Right, let's put it about here, shall we? Okay, so the reason why I made these sorts of shapes was so that you could use them in different ways. So you could simply draw around this shape now, and then you could stamp, and you could do all sorts of different things. But the thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring in my stamps as well in a second and show you how you can use the two together. But one of the first things I'm going to show you is how to use one of these masking ones. So I've grabbed my sponge tool. Now my sponge tool is a rounded one, so you peel these off, change them if you want to, and I actually use this for all sorts of things. I'm going to bring in my ink, so if you haven't seen the stamping video, which introduced you a little bit to inks, then hop over to the stamping video and you'll get a little idea about inks. Now, a lot of these ink pads are quite old, so if it's a little bit dry, I mean, we're talking 10 years for some of these, so let's have a look and see how we do. So what I've done is I've inked it up, only lightly, a few dabs onto the sponge, and I'm not going to press in hard, I'm just going to really lightly smooth over in a circle motion. So I'm trying to keep it as still as I can. If you want, you can use glue drops underneath or masking tape, but I'm just going to hold it down. So I'm just using a circle motion around and around, and lightly, and that's the really important thing. So you can go back over and make the colour stronger by coming back over, dipping it in and coming back over, and then just letting it get lighter and lighter as you come away. And the better way to do it is to actually start off with just a couple of movements around, leaving it light and then going back in, getting some more and darkening up by going back over again. The worst thing you can do is press in really hard, because what's going to happen then is you'll just get a mark on the paper where you've pressed too hard. So light circular motions, round and round, and just fading out as you come away. I can move the stencil now. Fading out as you come away, and then you'll end up with this beautiful masked. So here, where I had the stencil, where I had the mask, is still white, or whatever colour paper and card you've used underneath, and then your ink is where you've shaded it out. So if I was doing this now on a card that I was going to use, I would continue shading the rest of the card, so all of the rest, just leaving that one star white. Then I'd start adding gems over the top, maybe a stamped sentiment, and I'd have a really quick card. So a really simple and easy way there to use a mask stencil. Okay, so let's move on and look at using the other part of the stencil. So let's say we were going to use, I'm going to open up the stars now. So that was the centre star, the mask part of the star. I'm actually going to move on to this piece now. And what I'm going to do, let's turn it over. There we go. Save the planet. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to stamp in the centre here. So what have I got that I can use? Let's have a look. We've got, oh, these ones will do. That will look nice. So I'm going to put this little stamp here onto this one, and then I'm going to, let's have a look, what colour's going to stand out? Let's have a look at this one. Let's have a practice. So we're just going to, I'm just testing, yes, nice and bright, perfect. Okay, so what I can do now is I can bring the stamp and stamp half on, half off of the stencil. So you can see there that I'm actually using the stencil as a guideline. So if we start with the fully inked up and then start doing some secondary stamping as well. So if you've watched the stamping video, you'll know secondary stamping is stamping again before re-inking. So I'm not re-inking straight away. I'm actually going to stamp again and let the colour drain out, and gives me lots of different shades. So what I'm doing is I'm repeatedly stamping all around the edge, right up to the edge, and I'm just filling up this inner star shape. There we go, and I'm using secondary stamping as well as the fully inked. So I've gone over the edges here, as you can see, but when I lift this up, I end up with the star shape. Alright, so that is another way you can use your masks with your stamps, and it's a fantastic effect that you end up getting then, because you can create solid shape. You can keep moving this around now, and you could do it again and again, and it's filling up and using your stencils and your stamps together. Okay, so we've looked now at using the mask and using a sponge to shade. We've looked at stamping through the stencils. The other obvious way is to actually use the stencil as is, like this, on the top here. And then what you can do is you can spread your sparkle medium type paste through, or you can draw through them. But let's have a look at shading through with a sponge. Now what I would advise is, if you've got masking tape to hand, which I don't have at the moment, I would advise that you put some tape down around the edges, but I don't have any at the moment, so we're just going to have a go at doing this freehand, holding it down. So again, what I'm doing is I'm moving it in a circular motion, and I'm not re-inking every time. I inked at the start of the word, and then I let the ink fade out. I'm going to come backwards over that. I'm going to come backwards over here, and I like I said, I should have put this down with masking tape, but I've just done it with my hand just to show you. So let's lift this one up now, and there we go. Okay, so I've let the colour fade through and then the colour fade through again. So that's just using the stamp as a very basic stamp. But as I say, there's all sorts of mediums that you can get that can go through the stencils. If you're going to use a sparkle medium type thing or a texture paste, you'll want to put your anchor of masking tape at the top, around the edges, and then spread through. There's probably some videos of me doing that from 4, 5, 6 years ago back on the YouTube channel if you have a little look, so it's worth having a look. So let's bring you back up. Hello. So hopefully you found that useful. Hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into how you can use your stencils. As I say, there's loads more ways, but this is just a really basic introduction into using stencils, which hopefully you'll find useful in your creative crafting journey. I have used them in my artwork as well, so if you know me for artwork, I've used them in my artwork to add little details and things around, and also in home design, so as I say, on walls, on doors, toy boxes, clothing even. Stencils are just fantastic. There's so many things that you can do with them, so well worth investing in some stencils if you like the designs that you can find. Thanks for watching, everyone. It's really good to be back making videos again. I've got lots more ideas of things that I can do, but if you have any requests for videos you'd like me to share with you, it could be crafting related, it could be art related, it could be having a look at some of the things you see behind me, some of my supplies. It can be introducing you to some products in the shop is that way now, or it could even be my gardening, because I absolutely love container gardening, and my allotment and all sorts. So if you've got any suggestions of any videos you want to see on the channel, let me know, and I'll do what I can. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.